Palestinians have been displaced by the widening offensive by Israel in southern Gaza. The fighting is impacting the delivery of food, water, medicine, gas, as the humanitarian crisis gets more dire. Israel's latest evacuation orders have forced people into smaller areas in the south. The United Nations says nearly 1.9 million people, 80% roughly of Gaza's population, have been forced from their homes. The Palestinian Health Authority says more than 1,600 people have died since the war, 16,000, I should say, have died since the war began nearly 2 months ago. And that's 1,000 more, give or take, since the end of the armistice. And joining us now on this worsening humanitarian crisis in Gaza, I am joined by Nabil Ali. He's the Chief Operations Officer with the International Development and Relief Foundation. For starters, I want to thank you for your time. I know that we're hearing things are getting worse as the airstrikes by Israel resume. But, sir, what are you hearing from your team on the ground?
Well, honestly, I've been on the program now several times, and honestly, the situation just continues to get worse. Each and every time we kept calling the crisis in Gaza catastrophic, but now it's like I feel like I'm losing words. I don't really know what to kind of describe the situation as. Our teams on the ground are trying to figure out how to provide food and clean water and healthcare services, albeit all limited, while also trying to figure out how to just keep themselves safe, how to keep their family members safe, and also ensure that, you know, they uphold the humanitarian principles and do no harm. So the things on the ground have gotten catastrophic, and right now the big worry, of course, is as winter approaches in Gaza in the winter months, there's no walls to keep safe. So the worry in Gaza is great. The situation is just completely catastrophic, and it's chaos. That's what we're hearing from our teams on the ground, and they're losing hope. Although they're resilient, they're losing hope because things are very, very challenging at the moment.
We do keep hearing from other humanitarian organizations, from the WHO to UNRWA, part of the United Nations that deals with the Palestinian refugees, that there are no safe spaces right now, almost period, in Gaza. So is that been the situation for your team as you're hearing through the program?
Yes, very much so. That's the big challenge right now. Our teams on the ground are trying to provide services. So, you know, for instance, we have our lead coordinator who's out providing, you know, whether it's food programming or trying to organize psychosocial programming or ensuring that we can, you know, turn schools into shelters and ensuring people have that safety and security. And then they find out that their loved ones have passed away and that the extended family members have passed away, or even the members as close as their spouses have passed away, right? And just think of that, right? The fact that a humanitarian aid worker is going out to provide life-saving support services, and then at the same time finds out that, you know, members of their immediate family members are no longer with us, that they couldn't spend the last moments with them, they can't give them the funeral that they would have loved to, they can't even say goodbye because at times they can't even reach them because there are parts of Gaza that they can't get to, and that's the challenge, right? And you have discussions with members of your team that you don't want to have to talk about, and that's what makes this situation that much worse. So yes, our narrative from an organizational standpoint is very similar to that of other UN agencies and other organizations that are on the ground, that there is no safe spaces right now. The spaces that were safe and where we were coordinating to do humanitarian work, we now have to figure out how we're going to evacuate. So the situation is really tough right now.
We know that quite literally hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have crowded into the south after moving from the north, mostly out of Gaza City, the biggest city. Now they're being told to move again. I've been speaking with people who have lost dozens of family members. They're wondering if their cousins are now going to even survive. How has the overcrowdedness of southern Gaza contributed to the crisis on a humanitarian level? I'm thinking, does this not make disease more rampant? Does it also make a challenge for having any clean drinking water, even the bare basics?
You're totally right. That's exactly the issue right now. So you're dealing with large-scale bombardments, right? You're talking about 1.8 million people in a very small confined space. They already didn't have much drinking water in the first place. Healthcare was already on the brinks of collapsing. Very little food for people across the board. And overall, the only sense of security and safety that people had were in these spaces that were schools. So they're no longer a space of education. They became shelters, and now even schools are being bombed, right? So couple all of that together, you're dealing with team members that essentially were trying trying to ensure that we're providing winter programming, such as giving out jackets and winter clothes to people and trying to give some level of safety. We're trying to figure out how to evacuate people out of schools into the new safe zone, right? So now all these people are in the same space. And on top of that, there's no level of dignity. So there's no hygiene items, there's no sanitation facilities, there's barely any of this stuff. So this just increases heightened risk of communicable diseases. We already saw high numbers of cases of those coming in. And our worry is that that may just kill just as many people as these bombardments are killing. So this is the big issue right now on the ground. We're trying to juggle one too many things, and you're dealing with 1.8 million people that are likely going to all be within the small confined space, and the risks are extremely heightened from a humanitarian perspective.
As you said, sounds like a catastrophe. Nabil Ali, Chief Operations Officer with the International Development and Relief Foundation, joining us tonight. Nabil, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.